The Craxian commander stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly beneath him. Earth. Such an unremarkable world by galactic standards. No exotic atmosphere, no extreme gravity, no unusual radiation. Just another temperate planet with carbon-based life forms. "Sir, the human delegation has agreed to our terms," his lieutenant reported, tentacles writhing with satisfaction. "They will surrender their outer colonies within the standard cycle." Commander Vorth's 4 eyes narrowed. It had been too easy. Every species they had conquered had fought harder than these humans. The Zalathi had resisted for months with their plasma weapons. The Gorvani had used their telepathic abilities to coordinate devastating counterattacks. But humans? They had folded after losing just 3 battles in space. "Something feels wrong," Vorth muttered, his scaled skin shifting colors to reflect his unease. No species with faster-than-light capability surrenders this quickly. "Perhaps they are simply logical, sir. They saw our superior numbers and technology and chose survival over extinction." Vorth wanted to believe it. The Craxian Empire had conquered 47 systems using the same strategy. Overwhelm with superior firepower, demand surrender, integrate the survivors into their workforce. It was efficient. It was civilized by galactic standards. 3 days later, everything changed. The first sign of trouble came from the garrison on Kepler 442b, one of humanity's outer colonies. The transmission was brief and terrifying. "Base command, we're under attack, but we can't see." The message cut off in a burst of static. Vorth immediately dispatched a response team. When they arrived, they found the entire garrison dead. 300 Craxian soldiers, some of the best in the Empire, lay scattered across the compound. Each one had a single wound, a small hole through their cranial ridge, the Craxian equivalent of a headshot. "Impossible," the investigation team leader reported. "The shots came from outside our defensive perimeter. The furthest body is 2 kilometers from the base wall. No known infantry weapon has that range with such precision." But it got worse. Security footage showed nothing. Motion sensors detected nothing. Thermal scanners picked up nothing. The Craxian soldiers had simply started dying one by one, with several seconds between each death. They had scrambled for cover, tried to return fire, called for support. Nothing had helped. The second incident happened on Proxima Centauri B. This time, an entire armored column was ambushed while crossing a valley. 30 heavy tanks, pride of the Craxian military, reduced to burning wreckage in less than 5 minutes. The investigation found that each tank had been disabled with a single shot to a critical weak point, the ventilation system that cooled the power core. The shots had come from the surrounding mountains, at ranges that seemed impossible. By the time the third garrison fell, Vorth knew they were dealing with something unprecedented. He called a meeting of his senior staff. "Humans have some kind of new weapon," his intelligence officer suggested. "Perhaps a guided projectile system we haven't encountered." "No," the weapons specialist disagreed. "The entry wounds are consistent with kinetic projectiles. Simple metal slugs accelerated to high velocity. The technology is primitive by our standards." "Then how are they doing this?" Vorth demanded. The answer came from an unexpected source. A Craxian patrol on the colony world of Ross 128b had managed to capture a human soldier. Not one of the mysterious attackers, but a regular Marine who had been separated from his unit. Under interrogation, the human had laughed. "You want to know what's killing your soldiers? Snipers? Human snipers?" The interrogator had been confused. "What is a sniper?" "A soldier trained to kill from long distance. 1 shot, 1 kill. You'll never see them coming." The concept was foreign to Craxian military doctrine. In galactic warfare, combat happened at close range with energy weapons and shields. The idea of a single soldier engaging targets from beyond visual range seemed primitive and inefficient, but the human had explained more, perhaps enjoying the look of growing horror on his captors' faces. Humans have been perfecting long-range precision shooting for centuries. Our eyes might not see in as many spectrums as yours, but we excel at judging distance, wind, and trajectory. We can calculate bullet drop over kilometers. We can compensate for planetary rotation. Hell, the best human snipers can put a round through a playing card at 2,000 meters. Impossible, the interrogator had said. No biological being could make such calculations quickly enough. The human had shrugged. We don't calculate, we feel it. We call it instinct, but it's really just evolution. Our ancestors were persistence hunters. They had to track prey over long distances, predict where it would go, lead their throws just right. 1,000,000 years of evolution made us very, very good at hitting distant targets. Vorth read the interrogation report 3 times. It seemed absurd. The Craxians had conquered species with natural armor, species that could see in the dark, species that could regenerate limbs. How could humans, with their soft skin and limited senses, be such effective killers? He got his answer during the next engagement. Vorth personally led a force to retake the garrison on Kepler 442b. This time, they were ready. Or so they thought. The Craxians deployed their best equipment: energy shields, automated turrets, aerial drones for surveillance. They moved in tight formations, always under cover, never exposing themselves for more than seconds at a time. It didn't matter. The first shot came from a rocky outcrop 3 kilometers away. It punched through an energy shield like it wasn't there and dropped a Craxian officer instantly. The shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not kinetic projectiles moving at supersonic speeds. Panic spread through the ranks. Soldiers dove for cover, but cover was relative. The human snipers seemed to know exactly where to shoot. A Craxian hiding behind a rock formation died when a bullet found a tiny gap in the stone. Another, crouched behind an armored vehicle, was killed when a shot ricocheted off the ground and up into his chest. The drones found nothing. The human snipers were invisible, their positions perfectly camouflaged, their heat signatures masked. Every few seconds, another shot would ring out, and another Craxian would fall. Vorth ordered an orbital bombardment of the surrounding area. Surely that would eliminate the threat. The ship's weapons turned 5 square kilometers into molten glass. When the dust settled, Vorth sent in another team. The snipers were still there. They had simply been further out than anyone had imagined possible. The shots now came from 5, 6, even 7 kilometers away. At those distances, the bullets took several seconds to reach their targets, but the snipers had calculated for that. They were shooting where their targets would be, not where they were. The psychological effect was devastating. Craxian soldiers refused to leave their ships. Officers wouldn't expose themselves to give orders. The mighty Craxian war machine, which had crushed dozens of civilizations, was being paralyzed by an enemy they couldn't even see. Vorth tried everything. Night operations were useless. The humans had technology that let them see in the dark. Smoke screens didn't help. The snipers switched to thermal optics. Even randomized movement patterns failed. Somehow, the humans could predict where a running Craxian would be seconds before they got there. The breaking point came when Vorth himself was targeted. He had been in his command vehicle, surrounded by guards and armor, when a bullet punched through a tiny observation port and missed him by centimeters. The shot had come from a mountain peak 8 kilometers away. 8 kilometers, in high wind, through a port barely larger than a Craxian's eye. The sniper had missed on purpose. A second later, Vorth's communication system crackled to life. A human voice, calm and professional, spoke in accented Craxian. "Commander Vorth, this is Sergeant Kate Morrison, United Earth Marine Corps. That was a warning shot. The next one won't miss. You have 10 seconds to order a full retreat." Vorth's pride warred with his survival instinct. He was commander of the most powerful fleet in the sector. He had never retreated from primitives with projectile weapons. 5 seconds, Commander. But he had also never faced an enemy that could kill him from beyond the horizon. An enemy that turned the simple act of walking outside into a death sentence. An enemy that had evolved for precisely this kind of warfare. All units, fall back to the ships, Vorth ordered. Full retreat! As his forces evacuated, Vorth received a final message from the human sniper. Smart choice, Commander. Tell your Empire that Earth is protected. We have 20,000 snipers spread across our colonies. Each one can do what I do. Some are even better. Your soldiers will never be safe on any world we defend. You'll never see us, never find us, but we'll always be watching, always waiting. One shot, one kill. The defeat sent shockwaves through the Craxian Empire. How could they conquer a species when stepping onto their planets meant death from invisible enemies? How could they occupy worlds when their soldiers couldn't even leave their barracks without dying? Other species in the galaxy took notice. The Zelathi, who had been conquered by the Craxians decades ago, suddenly found human military advisors offering to train them in marksmanship. The Gorvani received shipments of human-made rifles and scopes. Within months, rebellions were breaking out across Craxian space, all of them featuring the deadly long-range tactics the humans had pioneered. But the true revelation came from the galactic scientific community. Xenobiologists studying humans made a startling discovery. Human eyes, while limited in spectrum, were incredibly advanced when it came to depth perception and tracking movement. Human brains had dedicated regions for calculating trajectories, evolved from millions of years of throwing rocks and spears at prey. Humans could instinctively perform calculations that other species needed computers for. Moreover, human patience was legendary by galactic standards. A human sniper could lie motionless for days, waiting for the perfect shot. Their bodies could slow their heart rates, control their breathing, enter a state of hyper-awareness that was almost meditative. They were persistence predators perfected, evolved to track and kill over vast distances. The Craxian Empire never recovered from what became known as the Invisible War. Within a year, they had lost half their territory to rebellions. Within 2 years, they were suing for peace. The mighty conquerors had been brought low by humans with rifles, patience, and an evolutionary gift for long-range death. The galactic community learned to fear human snipers above all other military threats. Energy weapons could be shielded against. Telepaths could be blocked. But there was no defense against a patient human with a rifle, willing to wait days for one perfect shot from an impossible distance. Earth's recruitment offices were flooded with requests from other species, all wanting to learn the secrets of human marksmanship. But as the instructors explained to their alien students, the real secret wasn't technology or training. It was a million years of evolution that had turned humans into the perfect long-range killers. You can learn to shoot, one instructor told a class of mixed species. But you'll never be what we are. We're not just snipers. We're persistence predators with rifles. We evolved to track prey across continents, to throw spears with deadly accuracy, to wait with infinite patience for the perfect moment to strike. We turned that evolutionary gift into an art form, and then we gave it modern weapons. That's why we're the apex predators. Not because we're stronger or faster or tougher, but because we can kill you from so far away. You'll never even know we were there. The war had proven what humanity's military had long suspected. In a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, sometimes the most primitive skills were the most devastating. While other species had evolved energy weapons and shields, humans had perfected the simple art of putting a piece of metal exactly where they wanted it, from distances that defied belief. And in doing so, they had claimed their place as the galaxy's deadliest predators, not through superior technology or exotic abilities, but through patience, precision, and an evolutionary heritage that made them born killers at range. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 3 centuries. Representatives from 57 spacefaring civilizations gathered on the neutral station orbiting Sagittarius AI, the supermassive black hole at the galaxy's center. The topic of discussion: humanity's unprecedented military capabilities and what they meant for galactic stability. Ambassador Thylex of the Etherian Collective stood to address the assembly. Her translucent form shimmered with anxiety. Fellow beings, we must acknowledge the paradigm shift that humanity represents. For millennia, we've measured military might by fleet size, energy weapon yield, and shield strength. The humans have made all of that irrelevant. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Craxian representative, a new appointee after Commander Vorth's disgrace, remained silent. Their empire's humiliation was still fresh. "I propose we demand humanity share their training methods," declared the Vorthan delegate. "No single species should possess such an advantage." The human ambassador, Sarah Chen, stood slowly. She was small compared to most of the alien representatives, but the room fell silent when she spoke. "With respect, what you're asking for isn't something we can simply hand over. Our capabilities aren't just about training. They're about evolution, culture, and psychology. But more importantly, we've noticed something interesting since the war with the Craxians ended." She gestured to a holographic display. "Piracy is down 80% across all sectors. Border disputes have been resolved through negotiation rather than force. 3 genocidal campaigns have been abandoned. Why? Because every aggressive species in the galaxy now knows that conquering a world means nothing if you can't hold it. And you can't hold a world when death can come from kilometers away." The Zalathi representative spoke up. "The humans trained our resistance fighters. In 6 months, we liberated 3 systems from Craxian control. But our best marksmen could only achieve 60% of human accuracy at half the range. Ambassador Chen speaks truth. This is not merely training." An uneasy silence settled over the council. Finally, the ancient Celestine Prime, eldest of the gathered species, asked the question everyone was thinking. "What do the humans want?" Chen smiled. "Peace, trade, cultural exchange. We have no interest in conquest, but we will defend ourselves and our allies with every evolutionary advantage we possess. Consider this. Humanity could have kept our capabilities secret, struck from the shadows, built an empire on fear. Instead, we revealed ourselves to save lives. We ended a war that would have cost millions more on both sides. But you hold a knife to the galaxy's throat," the Vorthan insisted. "No," Chen replied. "We hold a shield, a very sharp, very precise shield that only activates when someone tries to take what isn't theirs." Meanwhile, on Earth, the reality of humanity's new status was creating unexpected changes. The small town of Whittier, Alaska, population 272, had somehow produced 3 of the deadliest snipers in human history. News crews from across the galaxy descended on the remote settlement trying to understand what made humans such natural killers at range. They found Jack Morrison, no relation to Kate, age 73, teaching his grandson to shoot tin cans off a fence post. "Nothing special about it," Jack told a bewildered Altarian reporter. "My daddy taught me, his daddy taught him. Been shooting since I could hold a rifle steady. Out here you learn young or you go hungry." The reporter's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "But the precision required for military sniping," Jack chuckled. "Son, or whatever you are, when you grow up needing to drop a caribou at 800 yards in a blizzard to feed your family, hitting a stationary target in good weather ain't that impressive. Every kid in Alaska learns to judge wind, calculate drop, lead moving targets. We just call it hunting." This revelation sparked intense study from xenobiologists. Human children, they discovered, began developing trajectory calculation skills as early as age 2. Every thrown ball, every game of catch, Every skipped stone across water was training the brain for ballistic computation. By adolescence, humans could perform these calculations instinctively, without conscious thought. Dr. Carrick's, a Thelian neuroscientist, published a groundbreaking paper, The Predator's Gift: How Humanity's Hunting Heritage Created the Galaxy's Deadliest Soldiers. His research showed that humans possessed a unique combination of traits: binocular vision for depth perception, a brain region specifically adapted for trajectory calculation, extraordinary patience from persistence hunting, and fine motor control that allowed for microscopic adjustments. But perhaps most terrifying was human psychology. While most species experienced increasing stress during long waits, humans could enter a near-meditative state. Snipers described the moment before taking a shot as the zone, a state of perfect calm where heartbeat slowed, breathing steadied, and the entire universe narrowed to the target and the crosshairs. The galactic military academies scrambled to adapt. The Gorvani War College added a new course, Countering Human Sniper Tactics. The syllabus was depressing reading. Traditional counters didn't work. Smoke? Humans had thermal optics. Cover? They'd wait for days until you emerged. Armor? They'd find weak points or use specialized ammunition. Random movement? They'd predict your patterns. The only effective counter was to never present a target at all. But that meant never leaving fortified positions, which meant ceding all territorial control to enemy forces. It was a tactical nightmare. Some species tried to develop their own sniper programs. The results were mixed at best. The Craxians, desperate to regain military relevance, established an elite marksmanship school. After 2 years and enormous expense, their best shooter could reliably hit targets at 1 kilometer. Human military observers, invited to watch a demonstration, politely applauded. They didn't mention that teenage human hunters regularly made similar shots for sport. The Vorthans tried a technological approach, developing AI-assisted targeting systems. The computers could calculate trajectories perfectly, but they couldn't account for the 1,000 tiny variables that human snipers processed instinctively. The way wind patterns shifted around buildings, how atmospheric pressure changes affected bullet flight. The minute tremors in a target's movement that indicated they were about to change direction. But the true shock came during the Andromedan Crisis. A rogue faction of the silicon-based collective had seized control of several mining worlds, enslaving the carbon-based populations. The Galactic Council authorized a joint military response. For the first time, human snipers would work alongside alien forces in a coordinated campaign. The operation began with orbital insertions onto the planet Kepler 1649c. Mixed teams of human snipers and alien spotters took positions in the mountainous terrain surrounding the Silicon faction's main processing facility. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans went to work. Sergeant Lisa Park of the Canadian Armed Forces found a position on a ridgeline 4.3 kilometers from the facility. Her spotter, a young Etherian named Vilix, could hardly believe the distance. "The atmospheric density here is 1.3 times Earth standard," Vilix reported, running calculations on his equipment. "Wind speed varying between 15 and 25 kilometers per hour, gusting to 30. Temperature gradient causing significant thermal lift. Target area experiencing localized pressure variations from the processing equipment. Recommendation: find closer position." Park smiled, making minute adjustments to her scope. Noted. "Wind call?" What? You can't seriously be planning to shoot from here." "Wind call, Vilix. Just like we trained." The Etherian consulted his instruments. "Wind from the northwest at 18 kph, gusting to 26. Park made another adjustment. Through her scope, she could see a silicon enforcer on the facility's outer wall. The being was mostly crystalline, but she'd studied their anatomy. There was a critical processing node where their main trunk met their locomotion array, a finger-sized target at over 4 kilometers. She controlled her breathing, felt her heartbeat slow. The world narrowed. Wind, distance, gravity, the planet's rotation, all became part of a single calculation performed not by her conscious mind, but by millions of years of evolution refined into this single moment. The rifle cracked. Vilix tracked the bullet's flight through his equipment, watching it arc through the air for nearly 6 seconds. It struck exactly where Park had aimed. The silicon enforcer shattered, its crystalline structure catastrophically failing from the precisely placed impact. "Impossible," Vilix whispered. Park was already lining up her next shot. "You spot, I shoot. That's how this works." Across the operation, similar scenes played out. Human snipers eliminated key targets with surgical precision while their alien partners watched in awe. Command nodes, communication arrays, defensive positions all fell to invisible death from beyond the horizon. The psychological warfare aspect proved equally devastating. The Silicon faction had never encountered an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't detect, couldn't counter. Their rigid, logical minds struggled to process the seemingly random deaths. Panic spread through their ranks. By the 3rd day, they were offering to surrender if the shooting would just stop. The operation's after-action report became required reading at military academies across the galaxy. 43 human snipers had effectively paralyzed a force of over 10,000. They'd taken out leadership, destroyed morale, and made it impossible for the enemy to coordinate any effective response. General Zix of the Altarian Defense Force summed it up in his analysis. "We've spent centuries perfecting energy weapons, shields, and fleet tactics. The humans perfected throwing rocks. Somehow they won. But humanity's reputation as apex predators created unexpected problems. Some species became terrified of humans, refusing trade or diplomatic relations. Others tried to hire human mercenaries, hoping to use their skills for conquest. Earth's government had to establish strict regulations on military training for non-humans, and even stricter rules about human soldiers serving other powers. The most interesting development came from humanity's new allies. The Zalathi, having experienced human training firsthand, became Earth's strongest supporters in the Galactic Council. They understood what others didn't. Humans weren't conquerors. They were protectors. The same instincts that made them lethal snipers also made them fiercely defensive of those they considered part of their pack. A Zalathi diplomat explained it to his colleagues. "You fear humans because they can kill from great distance. But observe. They developed these skills not for conquest, but for survival. They hunted to feed their tribes. They protected their communities from predators. Now they see the peaceful species of the galaxy as their extended tribe. Be glad the apex predators are on our side." This shift in perspective began to change how the galaxy saw humanity. Yes, they were unparalleled killers at range, but they used that ability to maintain peace, not to dominate. Human sniper teams became the ultimate peacekeepers, deployed to conflict zones where their mere presence prevented violence. The criminal syndicates learned this lesson painfully. A slave trading operation in the Outer Rim ceased overnight when its leaders started dying from invisible bullets. Pirates avoided human-protected shipping lanes after a few crews were eliminated before they could even board their targets. The galaxy's predators had discovered they were no longer at the top of the food chain. Dr. Chen Hua, Earth's leading military psychologist, published a paper that helped explain humanity's unique position. The Sniper's Paradox: How Ultimate Lethality Creates Peace. He argued that human snipers were so effective precisely because they weren't trying to dominate. They had no need to prove superiority or establish control. They simply removed threats with clinical precision. A conqueror needs to be seen, to inspire fear through display of power, Chen wrote. A protector just needs to stop the threat. Human snipers embody this perfectly. They don't care if you know they're there. They don't need recognition or submission. They just need you to stop hurting people. And if you don't stop, you die. It's not personal. It's not even particularly emotional. It's just problem-solving at very long range. This philosophy began to influence galactic military doctrine in unexpected ways. The age of massive fleet battles and orbital bombardments was ending. Wars of conquest became practically impossible when the conquered population might include humans or human-trained snipers. The risk-reward calculation that had driven conflict for millennia no longer made sense. A Craxian military historian noted ruefully, "We spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of visible warfare. Massive ships, overwhelming firepower, shock and awe. The humans spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of invisible warfare. One hunter, one target, one outcome. We never stood a chance." But the real change came in how humanity integrated with the galactic community. Human military advisors were in high demand, but they came with conditions. They would train defensive forces only. They would not enable conquest or oppression, and they reserved the right to withdraw support if their students violated these principles. The story of Major Tom Bradley became legendary. Assigned to train the Paxian Defense Force, he discovered they were planning to use their new skills to settle an old territorial dispute. Bradley's response was swift and unambiguous. He disabled every rifle he'd provided, destroyed all training materials, and sent a message to the Paxian leadership. "You get one warning. Use what we teach for defense only, or the next time you see a human sniper, you won't see anything else." The Paxians abandoned their plans within hours. As Earth's influence spread, a new saying emerged among the criminal and militant factions of the galaxy: "Never give a human a reason to reach for a rifle." It became a principle of survival, more effective than any treaty or law enforcement effort. The apex predators had indeed claimed their position, but not through conquest or domination. They'd done it by making violence too costly to contemplate, by ensuring that those who lived by the sword would die by a bullet they never saw coming. And in the quiet reaches of space, on worlds where peace had replaced conflict, children of a dozen species slept safely. They were protected by the knowledge that somewhere, perhaps on a distant ridge or hidden in an urban sprawl, a human with a rifle was watching, waiting, ready to reach out across impossible distances and remove any threat to the innocent. The galaxy had learned to fear human snipers, but more importantly, it had learned to trust them. The apex predators had become the ultimate guardians, proving that sometimes the most powerful position was the one nobody could see. 20 years had passed since the Craxian War, and the galaxy had transformed in ways nobody could have predicted. The Sniper Accords, signed by 43 species, had established new rules of warfare that acknowledged humanity's unique capabilities. The document was simple. Human snipers would serve as neutral peacekeepers in conflicts, and any force that deliberately targeted them would face the combined military response of all signatory species. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the GSS Vigilance, humanity's contribution to the new galactic peacekeeping force. At 35, he was considered young for his position, but his record spoke for itself. 1,500 confirmed kills across 7 conflict zones, all verified as legitimate military targets threatening civilian populations. "Captain," his Altarian executive officer approached, her feathers rustling with concern. "We're receiving a priority distress signal from the Vegan system. The Dominion is making their move." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. The Crimson Dominion was the last holdout, a coalition of warrior species that rejected the new galactic order. They believed in the old ways, conquest through superior firepower, might making right. They'd been building their forces in secret, preparing for what they called the War of Liberation against human influence. How bad? 3 inhabited worlds under orbital bombardment. The local defense forces are overwhelmed. The Dominion brought a fleet of 800 ships. Marcus nodded slowly. "Send the word. Operation Longshot is active. All sniper teams to their assigned positions." Across human space, the message spread. Veterans put down their farming tools and picked up their rifles. Instructors left their classrooms. Hunters abandoned their trails. Within hours, 12,000 of humanity's finest marksmen were moving toward the conflict zone. The Dominion's supreme commander, a massive Thoraxian named Krell, broadcast his message across all frequencies. The age of human dominance ends today. No longer will the galaxy cower before invisible cowards who fight from shadows. We bring honorable warfare back to the stars. His fleet was impressive. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with plasma cannons. Carriers launching thousands of fighter craft, siege platforms capable of cracking continents. Against such might, what could individual humans with rifles accomplish? Krell would find out soon enough. The first sign of trouble came at the Dominion's forward base on Vega Prime. They'd landed 50,000 troops to establish a beachhead, confident in their orbital supremacy. The base was a marvel of military engineering. Energy shields, automated defenses, overlapping fields of fire. It should have been impregnable. Sarah Morrison, Kate's daughter, lay prone on a mountain peak 18 kilometers away. The scope on her rifle was a masterpiece of human engineering, with adaptive optics that could compensate for atmospheric distortion at ranges that would have seemed like magic to her ancestors. "Wind?" she asked her spotter, a veteran named James Park. 32 kph from the west, gusting to 45. Density altitude is playing hell with the calculations. You sure about this? Sarah smiled. It was the same smile her mother had worn before taking the shot that started the legend of human snipers. My mom made a shot at 8K in worse conditions. Time to show these Dominion bastards why that was just the beginning. The Dominion's base commander was addressing his troops. Standing on a raised platform surrounded by energy shields and guards, he was explaining how the humans were cowards, how real warriors fought face to face, how the galaxy would be freed from the tyranny of long-range assassination. Sarah's rifle spoke once. The hypervelocity round took nearly 12 seconds to cross the distance. In that time, it passed through 3 layers of atmosphere with different densities, was affected by the planet's rotation, fought against varying wind speeds, and still arrived exactly where Sarah had aimed. The base commander's head simply ceased to exist. For a moment, absolute silence reigned. Then chaos erupted. Soldiers scrambled for cover, officers screamed orders, shield generators powered to maximum. But every 20 seconds, another leader died. The shots came from beyond their maximum sensor range, delivered with inhuman precision. Within an hour, the entire command structure was eliminated. The invasion force, leaderless and terrified, began to fracture. Some units dug in deeper, others requested immediate evacuation. All of them learned the same lesson the Craxians had 20 years ago. There was no defense against patient death from beyond the horizon. But the Dominion had anticipated human sniper tactics. Krell had spent years studying the Craxian defeat, and he thought he'd found the answer. If humans were apex predators on the ground, he would simply deny them ground to stand on. "Glass the mountains," he ordered. "Every elevated position within 50 kilometers of our forces. Leave them nowhere to hide." The orbital bombardment was thorough. Plasma beams turned mountain peaks into molten slag. Entire ranges were reduced to radioactive glass. Surely no sniper could survive that. They were right. The snipers on those mountains died, but Krell had made a critical error. He'd assumed human snipers needed mountains. Corporal David Kim lay in a grain field, his body covered by an advanced ghillie suit that made him virtually invisible to every known sensor. He was one of the new generation, trained in what the human military called micro-positions. His rifle rested on a bipod that raised it mere centimeters above the ground. His scope used ground-following radar to track targets through the subtle curve of the planet itself. The Dominion forces, confident after their orbital bombardment, began moving through the valleys. They stayed away from any elevation, kept to the low ground, moved in tight formations with overlapping shields. David began his work. At ranges of 10 to 12 kilometers, shooting through the tiny gaps that appeared when soldiers moved, he started eliminating targets. One shot every few minutes. Never from the same position twice. After each kill, he would low crawl to a new spot, sometimes moving only 50 meters, sometimes a full kilometer. The psychological effect was worse than before. At least with mountain snipers, you knew where danger might come from. But shots from empty fields, from positions that offered no tactical advantage, it broke something in the Dominion soldiers' minds. "They're everywhere," one intercepted communication said. "The humans are everywhere. You can't see them, you can't find them, they just kill and vanish." The Dominion's technology should have found them. Motion sensors, thermal imaging, quantum detectors, all useless. Humans had learned to mask their signatures, to move so slowly that motion sensors ignored them, to use the planet itself as camouflage. They were ghosts with rifles, and they were turning the invasion into a nightmare. But the real masterstroke came from an unexpected source. Admiral Patricia Wells, commander of Earth's orbital defense fleet, had been watching the invasion with interest. The Dominion had brought overwhelming firepower, but they'd made one crucial assumption: that space combat and ground combat were separate domains. "You know," she told her staff, "a sufficiently powerful rifle with the right ammunition can reach orbit. We've never tried it because it seemed impractical. But if we're already taking impossible shots..." The physics were daunting. Shooting through atmosphere into orbit required calculations that pushed even human abilities to their limits. The target would be moving at orbital velocities. The bullet would need to be specially designed to survive atmospheric exit. The timing would have to be perfect. Master Gunnery Sergeant Robert Chen, Marcus's uncle, volunteered for the attempt. He was 61 years old, with eyes that should have been too old for such work, but he'd been making impossible shots since before most of his fellow snipers were born. The weapon was a monster, barely portable, more small artillery piece than rifle. The ammunition was custom-made, each round a masterpiece of engineering. The calculations took 3 hours, accounting for everything from atmospheric pressure gradients to the relativistic effects of the target's velocity. The target was the Dominion flagship's main sensor array, a delicate piece of equipment that controlled their entire fleet's targeting systems. It was protected by meters of armor and powerful shields, but there was one vulnerability: a maintenance port that opened for exactly 3.7 seconds every hour for automated diagnostics. Robert lay on his back in a specially constructed cradle, the massive rifle pointing straight up. He had one chance. Miss, and the Dominion would glass his position from orbit. Hit, and he'd change space warfare forever. The shot, when it came, was anticlimactic. A crack of sound, a streak of light as the specialized round burned through the atmosphere. 93 kilometers straight up, fighting gravity and air resistance, carrying death to the stars. The round entered the maintenance port with 2 centimeters to spare and detonated inside the sensor array. The Dominion flagship went blind. In the confusion that followed, with their targeting systems down and unable to coordinate, 3 other ships suffered similar fates. The impossible had happened. Ground-based snipers were engaging orbital targets. Krell's rage was incandescent. He ordered a general bombardment of the planet's surface, but his fleet was in chaos. Some ships refused to lower their shields, terrified of surface fire. Others began retreating, their captains unwilling to face an enemy that could reach them even in the supposed safety of orbit. The breaking point came when Krell himself was targeted. Not for death. The humans had learned the value of psychological warfare. Instead, sniper rounds began impacting his flagship's hull in a precise pattern. When the damage was analyzed, it spelled out a message in neat bullet holes. "Leave now, or we stop missing." The supreme commander of the last great invasion fleet in galactic history stared at those words etched in his ship's armor. He'd brought overwhelming firepower, superior numbers, advanced technology, and he was being defeated by humans lying in grain fields and shooting at the stars. "All ships," he finally ordered, his voice broken. "Full retreat." The Dominion's defeat was more than military. It was conceptual. They'd tried to return warfare to the old ways, to restore the age of massive fleets and orbital supremacy. Instead, they'd proven that humans had forever changed the nature of conflict. The footage of orbital targets being eliminated from planetary surfaces spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Military academies threw out their textbooks. The fundamental assumption that space and ground combat were separate spheres was dead. If humans could shoot down spacecraft from a planet's surface, no invasion fleet was safe. Dr. Yeath, a Gorvani military theorist, published what became the defining analysis, The Human Doctrine: How One Species Ended 10,000 Years of Warfare. His conclusion was stark. Traditional military conquest was now impossible. Any attempted occupation would face invisible death. Any orbital bombardment risked surface-to-orbit retaliation. The only viable conflicts were those fought in deep space, far from any planetary surface where a human might set up position. But the most profound change was cultural. The generation that grew up after the Dominion War didn't see humans as conquerors or even as warriors. They saw them as the galaxy's immune system, invisible, patient antibodies that activated only when the body was threatened by infection. Young humans trained alongside alien partners, teaching not just marksmanship, but the philosophy behind it. The Sniper's Creed, written by humanity's greatest marksman, became required reading in schools across the galaxy. We do not shoot because we can. We shoot because we must. Every bullet carries the weight of a life ending and a life saved. We are not killers. We are surgeons, removing cancer from the body of civilization. We find no joy in death, only satisfaction in protection. We are the watchers in the dark, the patients before the strike, the invisible line between predator and prey. We are humanity's gift to the galaxy, the promise that those who would harm the innocent will find no safe distance far enough. Marcus Chen retired 5 years after the Dominion War, his duty fulfilled. He returned to Earth and opened a training school in Montana, teaching the next generation not just how to shoot, but when not to. His final lesson to each class was always the same. You're inheriting a galaxy at peace because we proved that war is too costly. Every shot you take, every life you end, must serve that peace. We're not apex predators because we're the deadliest. We're apex predators because we choose when not to kill. Remember that, and you'll understand why the galaxy fears us less than they trust us. The school's shooting range stretched for 20 kilometers, with targets at distances that still seemed impossible to visiting alien observers. But the students, human and alien alike, learned that distance was just another factor in the equation. Wind, gravity, time. All could be calculated, compensated for, overcome. On graduation day, each sniper received a single bullet made from metal mined on Earth. It was never meant to be fired, just carried as a reminder. Inscribed on each was the same phrase in 100 languages. The shot not taken is the most powerful. The galaxy had learned to live with its apex predators. Trade flourished under the protection of invisible guardians. Pirates and slavers found other professions or found early graves. Wars still happened, but they were careful affairs, fought within strict rules that acknowledged the reality of human capabilities. And on 1,000 worlds, in hidden positions that offered clear fields of fire, human snipers maintained their vigil. They were teachers, protectors, and when necessary, executioners. They were evolution's answer to the question of how to maintain peace in a universe full of predators. The answer, it turned out, was to become the apex predator and then choose not to hunt. The war that proved human snipers were the galaxy's apex predators had ended not with conquest but with balance. The strong could no longer simply take from the weak, because somewhere, perhaps kilometers away, perhaps in orbit, a human was watching through a scope. And in that watching, that patient readiness to reach out across impossible distances and deliver justice one bullet at a time, the galaxy found something it had never had before: peace with teeth. The apex predators had claimed their throne not by climbing to the top of the food chain, but by making the food chain itself obsolete. And in the quiet moments between heartbeats, in the space between breath and trigger pull, humanity's snipers continued their eternal watch. They were the thin, invisible line between civilization and chaos. They were patience incarnate, precision personified, evolution's deadliest gift wrapped in camouflage and duty. They were human snipers, and the galaxy slept better knowing they were out there, waiting, watching, ready to prove once again why humanity's greatest warriors were the ones you never saw coming.